Okay, so let me know in the comments if you've ever seen this pawn structure before, because I've never seen it and I've never seen this game. So Alexander Alekhine, a former world champion, he was playing with white here, and his opponent was Vladimir Nenarokov. And this was played in Moscow 1907. So an oldie but a goldie. Let's check it out. So d4 on the board. Both players now develop, and black here gives us a lesson in how not to play the opening. So pushing a pawn, blocking his own bishop. Now Alekhine does the same. You know, if you're doing guess the ELO here, you wouldn't be overly impressed so far. And then c6 is played, this semi-Slav pawn structure. But after bishop d3, we get yet another pawn move going into this kind of stonewall Dutch thing. Now that's 4 pawn moves. We get knight e5, again a bit of a no-no from white. You know, normally you shouldn't move the same piece twice in the opening. And now queen f6, and I've added the question mark there. You know, you have to develop your pieces, right? So 4 pawn moves and a queen move is not the one. Anyway, knight d2 from Alekhine. We get knight d7 now played, finally a move, and after f4, taking the same pawn structure as black, we see a chops, pawn recaptures, and the queen drops back. Not the finest opening play, white has an advantage. So castles is now played, and now again, a weird move, right? I mean, you might think one of the minor pieces is going to develop here, but no, we get queen c7, moving that queen for a third time, and now c4 attacks the center, good move. So we get knight h6, another weird looking move, but it is one of the best, because it looks at g4, and there's ideas of f7, g5, e4, you know, the knight can go on a nice journey as well. So b3 now played, preparing to develop the bishop this way. We get bishop d7, pawn a4, and now bishop e7, and here Alekhine makes a really fatal mistake, because you should play bishop a3 immediately. Chopping these ones off is good to weaken the black squares in the position for black, but you want to do it, you know, in a position where the board hasn't yet opened up. What Alekhine does is takes on d5, opening the c file, but before he's developed his pieces, black's the first one to the punch. So now bishop a3 takes, rook takes, and after castles, well, you have to spend this tempo on rook a2. And now there's rook a c8, black in control of the file. Now we see the queen nudge over here. If you take the file straight away, well, you can go queen b6, and black's still the one in control there. So coming back here, we see queen e2 played. Now we get queen b6, rook c2, this one exchange, the second rook hits the file, bishop d3, queen b4, black's really in control now, because also white's got this backwards pawn, a weakness, needs to be babysat, so the knight's tied down. So we get pawn h3, stopping any knight hops. So now knight f7, looking at the journey mentioned. And now rook b1 just starts the kind of shuffly, miserable moves that white has to play. But this game is far from done, because watch the counterplay that Alekhine drums up. Now rook c3 was played here, king h2, pawn a6, queen f1, you know, lots of shuffling now, queen a3, that one starts to invade, rook d1 back, queen b2, queen e2 defends the knight some more, and now knight d8 goes on a weird kind of journey. You know, I'm not sure why not knight g5 to e4, but okay, knight d8 play, and now rook b1 kicks away the queen, and we get the rook back to f1, and finally now Alekhine is set up to try and get some counterplay with pawn g4. But after queen b4, he doesn't play it immediately, and he probably should have done, because he starts with bishop b1, which the computer doesn't mind, but after pawn b5, which was played, you then actually have to come back with this bishop as the best move. Let me just show that one quickly actually. And it looks like you're just losing a clean pawn, which you are, but then you can also take this one. Not that black has to take here, that's not the best move for black. Anyway, bishop d3 though was not played, not Alekhine's intention. He goes pawn g4. So trying to rip open these lines on the king side here, and he just says, you know what, screw it, take my entire queen side, I'm just attacking now. So he takes on f5. He does not play bishop d3, you know, covering this move. I mean, he had to play that a move sooner if he was going to do it. So he allows bishop b5, skewering queen and rook, and now look how he blocks it, knight c4. I mean, what is going on with this craziness? He just wants to absolutely attack the black king. He doesn't even care about his pieces. Black plays the best move here, which is rook takes on b3, because the knight's still pinned here to the queen. So we get this pawn now taking on e6, and this one takes here. So this is Alekhine's ideas. Use the pawns, use the open f-file, queen's coming here as well, which could be doing some really dangerous stuff in combination with the bishop. It is definitely a scary attack. But when you run it with the engine here, it does want to save this bishop with bishop to c2. Alekhine, however, just goes absolutely nuts here and plays queen to f3, ditching an entire bishop, which black takes. But it's fair enough to take it. It is the best move because there isn't actually any infiltration points for that queen. So the rooks now come off, queen recaptures, and now pawn e7. And you want this knight to get out the way and then actually deliver this checkmate here. Well, the pawn move now supports a checkmating threat. So where do you think the knight should jump to? What's the best square to actually, keep the position alive for black? Excuse me. So the move to play is knight e6, which was played. Because if you go knight f7, well, now you're losing to queen a8 check. You've just blocked the king's escape square. So you have to ditch some pieces, and this literally leads to a checkmate. So coming back here, knight f7 bad, knight e6 played instead. Now we get pawn d5, trying to kick the defender of this square, and queen comes back here. So you can't move the knight, you have to leave it there. Pawn takes one of the pieces back, checkmate threatened, but the queen drops back just in time, and this is the pawn structure culminating on the board. 4 in a row, a column of pawns, so I've never seen that before. I've seen 3 in a row, which they call the Irish pawn structure, I've heard it called, but never 4. So I thought this game's pretty cool just for that. I found it in a kind of weird cool games list, excuse me, on chessgames.com. Anyway, the problem here for white is how do you make progress? Because if you come down like this, well, big whoop-de-doo, you take, king takes, it's sat in front of the pawns, they're going nowhere, obviously this one's running. So even though the pawns look kind of cool, they're actually stopping each other. You really want them in chains, not in this kind of column of pawns. So we get queen d5 played, but now simply pawn h6, and you can't even go something like this, which looks tempting, because then this pawn can just run, and you have to get behind it to stop it. Okay, what are you achieving? You can even block the file with the bishop. So coming back here, no queen d8 played, we get queen c5, the pawn pushes anyway, and now queen takes on c3 because it distracts the queen from defending this one. That's one of the pawns eliminated. Queen c8 check. The queen block, queen c7, and again you couldn't stay with this pawn. You either have to exchange or you can't go anywhere that's going to defend the pawn. So queen c7, this pawn drops, and it forced resignation from Alekhine here. I mean, he's literally an entire bishop down and a pawn. It's completely game over. So I hope you enjoyed this cool game, really interesting pawn structure, never seen before. And if you want to see another epic game of chess, do check out the video on screen. Thanks very much for watching, and see you soon.